Every single human on this planet has 2 lives. And the second one starts the moment you realize you have only one.
Yes.
And I pondered that and I went, whoa, that is absolutely profound.
Welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Hey, Tabitha, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's always an honor.
Yes, guys, I want you to fasten your seatbelt, like put the seatbelt on today, because Dave is a powerhouse. We just had a little pre-talk, guys, and I should have probably recorded the whole thing because it was amazing, but I know Dave is going to bring it to you guys today. So you definitely want to sit back, or if you're driving in your car, just stay focused on the road because this is going to blow you away. Dave is the #1 Firewalk instructor in America. And for those of you who do not know what the Firewalk is, Tony Robbins, he didn't invent the Firewalk, but he definitely brought it to mainstream.
Oh, yeah.
And Dave was able to work for Tony Robbins and build an amazing relationship with him. He worked for him for over 19 years, and he started Firewalk Productions in 2014. He is a sought-after specialist. People like Google and Chick-fil-A and RE8 Max and Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, NASA, they are after this guy. Like, he is revolutionizing his industry. And so you definitely want to take note of what he has to say. But we all know that Dave did not start there. And Dave, my audience always likes to hear what went wrong. So tell us what went wrong.
What went wrong? Well, if I start at the very beginning of that, it would have been that my father, my biological father, committed suicide 2 months before I was born. We don't really know what happened, Tabitha. We just know that he hurt his head. And so they put a plate in his head to save his life, but it also took his life because this was in like 1953. So he had a lot of pain associated with it. So he used to say to Mom all the time, I don't know how much longer I can take it. Sure enough, he told Mom he's going to the grocery store one day, 2 months before I was born. Never saw or heard from him again. So when I was born with a single mom. So we're living in Hollywood, California. I've got 2 half brothers from another. She had, 2 other boys from another man, and then a cousin and my grandmother. So there were 6 of us living in a 1-bedroom apartment just down the street from Hollywood High School. And by the time I was 5, Mom was working up the street at the Roosevelt Hotel. She was really a hard worker because she came from that era, the baby boomers, the ones that fought World War II. They were some of the hardest working, most, incredible people that have ever walked this planet, in my humble opinion. And so, but by the time I was 5, she said, she couldn't feed me. So she went to her oldest sister, Pat, and said, Pat, will you and Bob, your husband, adopt David? And they agreed. So they took me from Hollywood to Long Beach. I'm 5. Everything was great. And by the time I was 11, on literally the very first day of summer, Mom comes in. I'm in the TV room. It's the first day of summer. You're a kid. You're going to have a blast, right? Mom brings me into the kitchen, and she said, we need to talk to you. She sets me down. She puts her hand on my hand, and she looks at me with Bob sitting there, my dad, who's raising me now, right? And she said, David, what we need to tell you is we're not your parents. What? What do you mean? What does that mean? No. That's like taking somebody outside and going, I know the sky looks blue, but it's not blue. And so that, my life took a really hard turn right there. And shortly after they told me this, they both started drinking. So they went to the store one day, and I was waiting for them because these 2 beautiful people, when they started drinking, turned into not such cool people, especially Bob. Bob was mean. Pat, she was more of a happy drunk. She'd pass out at the kitchen table. She wasn't really mean, but Bob was vicious. And so when they left, I wanted to know what this stuff was. They were hiding it in plain sight. So I went over. They left. I poured it in. I poured a coffee cup. I poured it about half full. I'm 11. Boom, down it went. I never had a chance, Tabitha. I was an alcoholic right on the spot. And by the time again, I'm 11. By the time I was a junior in high school, things had just progressed. They pulled me into the principal's office one day and said, Albin, you're dangerous. Out. Out I went, which was okay with me. I didn't really care. I was an entrepreneur, or at least I had an entrepreneur spirit at that point. Because when I was a kid, I had worked at the golf course. We lived right across the street from a golf course. And what I learned about golfers is they suck. They hit a lot of golf balls over the fence, right? So I just get on my bike. I'd go find the balls, and I'd clean them up and take them back to the parking lot and sell them back to the golfers. My mom grew beautiful flowers. Pat grew beautiful flowers in the backyard. She was I don't know that she was a horticulturist, but she was really skilled. And she grew thousands of flowers. So she would take them and bundle them. She had a really beautiful eye for color. She'd mix them all together. She'd cut the flower at the bottom at an angle. And the reason she did it at the angle, it gets more water up into the flower. You don't cut them at the bottom. And then she'd put them in a bucket, send me out on the street corner, and she put a little 7-Up into that bucket. And my flowers would literally outlast the local florist 2-1. So here's the kid on the corner selling flowers. I had a paper route 7 days a week. On Saturdays or Sundays, you're up at 5 o'clock, got to go get your papers to deliver them early. And of course, you had to do it every day after school. So again, here's what I learned as an entrepreneur when I was young. There's money out there. Go get it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
people consume. There's consumers out there for sure.
Right? And, like one of my mentors says, the good things come for those who hustle. And so that took hold. However, there I am as a junior. I'm already doing hard drugs, and I'm not doing well. So they kicked me out. I went and got a really good job, and I got my own apartment. I moved to Belmont Shore, California. I went out and bought a brand new Mach 1 Mustang. It was gorgeous, yellow with black interior, 4-speed, beautiful car, muscle car, if you will. And so I had to make a lot of money because I had a heck of a drug problem. Well, a few marriages later, I married my childhood sweetheart. That lasted about a month, literally. I married a wonderful woman from Virginia who was in California that I met. And she got me out of California, thank goodness, because there was a few drug dealers that wanted to have some pretty serious conversations with me. Let's put it that way. And so I went to Virginia, and then she looked at me one day and said, "David, I can't handle your drug addiction and your alcoholism." So she left. So then I married a bartender. How convenient. And she had 3 kids, and I look back, I married her because I really thought if those kids would help calm me down, and they kind of did, and they kind of didn't. And then I woke up on June 8th, tomorrow, 1988, grossly addicted to heroin, cocaine, alcohol, cigarettes, chocolate chip cookies. I mean, anything that was addictive, I went for it. Anything that could, bring a little pleasure and help me deal with pain, I would do it. And it was, I entertained, this is where another took a really hard turn. And that was, I was going to commit suicide because I was in such excruciating physical and emotional pain that I thought I'm just going to end it. And I had to slam on the brakes because I remember thinking, you know what, dude, you can't do that. Those 3 kids upstairs, you love them, you care about them. If you kill them, who do you think is going to clean up this mess? Right. So in a moment of compassion, I thought, you can't do it. You got to find another way to deal with your alcoholism and your drug addiction. So I called Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was literally one of the most profound turning points of my life. My very first AA meeting, I went, man, I'm home. I felt comfortable. I felt like I belonged. And the only 2 places I ever really felt like I belonged was AA and some grungy, crappy bar somewhere. And so those men just embraced me. It was an all men's group. And, one day led to a week, and a week led to a month. And then when I got a month, they gave me a medallion that said, 1 month. And then I got one at 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 1 year. And, by the grace of God and the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous, tomorrow, if I don't drink between now and then, I think I got a pretty good shot. It's 36 years. So let me back up. So as I was getting sober, I was up late at night all the time. And so I had insomnia. Mm-hmm. And so there I'm up late one night, 3 o'clock in the morning. And there he is, Mr. Wonderful, as I used to call him back then, Tony Robbins, who owned that infomercial space. And he was selling a program called Personal Power. It was a month-long program, and you did it at home. And so, I didn't like Tony when I first saw him. I thought he was a pompous ass, man. Yeah, he's all motivated, and I wasn't. But he said a couple things that got me. One, he said, we'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. And I went, wow, he's talking to me? Because that's exactly why I was using alcohol and drugs.
Right.
And then he said, the 2 driving forces in our life, how we make decisions are, we make them out of inspiration or desperation. And I went, holy mackerel, he is talking to me. So I bought his program, plugged it in, went through it, did what the man taught me to do, and it worked. Well, from there, I loaned my program to a buddy of mine in AA. And by the way, this is all going down in 1988, 1989. 7 years later, in 1995, my buddy that I loaned the program to called me on the phone, and he said, hey, did you know that Tony Robbins is coming to town? Nope, didn't have a clue. He goes, dude, you got to go. He goes, I want to go. Go with me. Yes, I'll go. Fine, great. I'll call you back. So he calls me back like an hour later, and he goes, done. Here's what they told us to do. Number one, excuse me, drink a lot of water. Bring snacks because you're going to spend a lot of time in the room. What an understatement that is. Anybody who's been to a Robbins event knows you're going to spend a lot of time in the room.
Bring a good attitude.
Do what?
Did you know the number one way to build wealth is through real estate? Have you always wanted to buy your first income property, but you didn't know where to start? Join my group, Legacy Wealth Builders, where we will teach you how to buy your first income property and then keep your wealth by teaching the success and wealth principles to your kids. Because it's not just about building your wealth, but it's about keeping it for generations to come. So click the link, join our group, because for the month of June, the group is free. So get all the training you need and join the group now. Bring a sweatshirt.
Oh God, yeah, right. It's a little chilly, especially if you set up around the stage. We used to call that, there's snow squalls in the back of the room. And then it said, bring a good attitude and be ready to play full out. Well, I said, well, Dan, how much was the ticket? He said $695 in 1995. I don't know. What's that worth today? Like 1.2 million. I mean, it's crazy, right? Right. Buy Bitcoin. Anyways, he's getting ready to get off the phone. He goes, oh, wait. I almost left out the most important part. We're going to be doing a firewalk. And I remember thinking, now I'm not saying anything, but I'm thinking, oh, like hell we are. No, we're not. Absolutely not. And you know what's interesting? I don't even know what that means.
Right.
Right. What is a firewalk? I have no references for that. I don't know what that is. But
I had to Google it. If you didn't have it, probably then.
I didn't have it. It was in 95, right? But the idea of fire and walk in the same sentence was like, nah, we're not doing that. But I'm not telling that to Dan. I just said, yeah, sure, Dan, sounds interesting. All right, see you then, bro. Well, the big day comes. We get there. Tony takes the stage at 2:00 in the afternoon. And the next thing I know, it's after midnight. 10 hours later, we're sitting there after midnight, 10 hours. And all of a sudden, Tony goes, take your shoes off. And I went, oh, no, pal. I ain't falling for that. I know where you're going with that. Well, I got a big problem. I'm in a room with 3,500 people. Guess what they're doing? They're taking their damn shoes off. Yep. And my buddy, right? He's taking his shoes off. So I'm like, all right. So what are you going to do? Not take your shoes off so everybody knows you're a coward? Can't have that. So I took my shoes off. And so here's my plan. I'm going to go out there into this big parking lot where this firewalk is, and I'm going to ditch my buddy, and I'm going to go hide in the back. That's my plan. And, when Tony's got everybody walking out there, he gets everybody to start clapping and chanting. Right? So everybody's going, yes, walking out there. And I'm walking out there going, no, ain't going to happen. Well, it gets worse. He's got African drummers when you get out there.
Yep.
Dun, 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 so the ambiance and the vibration, I mean, it's really, really intense.
Yeah.
So I get out there and I just sidestep my buddy and he loses me, or I lose him. And so then I make my way to the back and I'm going, cool. Okay. All right. I got it all figured out. I'm hiding in the back. No one's going to know. Well, other than me. Well, Tony Robbins knows that the firewalk is probably the most life-changing experience any human will go through. He knows there's a paradigm shift. And he also knows that there's people like me that if we don't come and find you and we miss the paradigm shift, then what's the point?
Right.
So what's he do? He trains people to come find. I'm not the only coward sitting in the back, by the way. There's a few of us. And so here comes this guy. Here comes this guy out of nowhere. He gets probably, 15, 20 feet from me, and he makes eye contact, and he won't take his eyes off me. And now he starts looking at me, twisting his head like a dog that hears a funny noise. And he's looking at me. He goes, hey, man. He kind of points at me. He goes, are you okay? And when we're not okay, what do we say?
Oh, I'm fine.
I'm fine. All good here, man. Nothing to see. Move along, dude. And he went right for the kill shot. He wasted no time. He said, hey, man, you going to walk tonight? And I said, absolutely not. I'm thinking, you idiot. Why do you think I'm hiding here in the back? And he's like, and I said it with a lot of intensity, right? So he kind of felt that. So he kind of backed up a little bit. He goes, hey, man, that's okay. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. And I went, wow, okay, I like this guy. He's going to get me out of here. No, he's not. He's setting me up. Because then the next question he asked me was, well, wouldn't you at least like to watch? And I'm thinking, well, sure, why not? Let's go watch these people burn their feet off. This should be entertaining.
Right.
And so, I took the bait, and he said, well, just get in line. I'm 100 yards away. I can see, what I can see is there's a big fire over here. To set this up, how do you walk 3,500 people or 12,000 people? You build a big fire, obviously, and you let it burn all day, and you just keep putting hardwood, cords and cords of wood on it, and it burns all day, and at the end of the night, it renders. So then you take shovels and you load those wheelbarrows full of coals, steel wheelbarrows, and you pull a wheelbarrow in between two lanes of sod, a fire lane, and that's grass, and it's 3 feet wide, 15 feet long. And then you just take a shovel and you sprinkle those coals on top of that grass. You pat it down, and that's what people walk on. Well, so I'm in line, and people are clapping, and people are already celebrating because they're firewalking. They're screaming. They're yelling. Their drums are going. I'm walking along, and another stranger comes up to me, and he whispers in my ear, and he says, he knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. And pew, this guy just disappeared into the night. And I'm like, What does that mean? What do you mean he knows when you're ready when he says go, you go? What's that mean? Because I'm not walking, right? I'm just going to get up so I can see it. Right. Well, I get to a point eventually, and I can see at an angle. I still got 1,000 people in front of me, but I can see them, and they're doing it. And every race, every creed, every color, they're firewalking. And my brain is going, what's wrong with these people? We're mammals. We're supposed to run from fire, not walk on it. Right. So it's breaking every rule in my head, right? Well, I'm not paying attention to where I am. And I'm watching over here. And next thing I know, I turn and boom, guess where I am? The front of the line. Front of the line. So now I'm looking down at that fire lane, right? The coals are on top of it. They're glowing bright red. My heart, Tabitha, is beating so hard, I know it's going to jump out of my chest. And there's a trainer standing right there. And all of a sudden he looks at me and he goes, eyes up. Like, you idiot. Did you not just spend 10 hours in the room? Did you not learn that Tony taught you? When you get out there, keep your eyes up. Don't stare at what you fear, because if you become asphyxiated on it, it'll take from you. And so What a metaphor, right? And so now my eyes are up. All right, gotcha. He's got me positioned, and now he's got to change my physiology. And he said, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I went, yes. And he went, stronger. And I went, yes. Well, he could tell I'm not in a peak state. I'm leaving a lot on the table, and he knew it. So he kind of got on my face and screamed at me, like, stronger. And so now I'm like pissed off, right? I threw my hands in the air and I screamed, yes. And he goes, go, go, go. Boom. I took off. Well, remember the guy? He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I did. Well, here's the first thing I learned about firewalking. When you take the first step, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I promise you, right? Well, as you may know, they position two guys at the end of the fire lane who grip hands, and they catch you. And they're like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. And I'm wiping my feet and I'm celebrating, and I don't believe what I've just done because I'm not going to do it. And for a second, I literally thought I burned myself, but I didn't. I was just having like a ghost pain, I guess. My feet were dirty, but there's no burns, nothing. And it was so exhilarating. I mean, I felt in that moment that I could do anything. I'm like, okay, people, where's the bus? Let's go climb Everest. What's next? And everybody's like that. But here's where it got really interesting for me. And a really turning point in my life was the next day. So this is a 4-day event. That was day one. That night, we're in day 2. And Tony's got us right where he wants us, because we're all standing in the foyer getting ready to go into the venue. And to this day, I've never seen or witnessed anything like it. It was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen or witnessed or been part of, because I'm being very observant and I'm watching all these people interact with each other. And they're laughing and they're hugging and they're crying and they're talking about their fears and they're talking about the firewalk. The vibration in that room with all those people. And we were total strangers the night before. And that next morning, you felt like you knew everybody. It was so beautiful. It was just magical. And so later, I got to meet one of Tony's trainers, a guy by the name of Ted Macy. Super dude. Him and his wife, Mary, were trainers for Tony back in the day. And so I'm just talking to Ted thinking, how cool is it to talk one of Tony's trainers, right? And I said, so Ted, what's it like being in this environment on a regular basis? And he goes, dude, are you kidding me? He said, let me tell you something. He said, you see those people standing over there with the black shirts and the pink writing on the back? Yeah, why? He goes, dude, they're volunteers. They're just like you. So if you want to come and be in this environment, when you go home, call Robbins, ask them for a volunteer crew application, fill it out, send it in. They could choose you very easily. And they did. And so the next thing I know, I got a letter in the mail that said, Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins companies. Well, color my ass happy. And so there I was in the environment. Well, the application is pretty thorough. They ask you a lot of questions. So they knew that I had a military background. They knew I had a security background. They knew I lived on a farm. They knew that I knew how to use a log splitter and tools and a hatchet. And I knew the difference between oak and hickory and locust. And, so I knew all that stuff, right? And I know what kindling is because I've got wood stoves, in my property. And so they brought me right in. Well, I crewed 5 or 6 times. The problem with that was I was spending about $1,500 to $2,000 every time because you got to pay your own way. Yeah. Well, my wife's going, time out. Hold it. Look at all this money we're spending. And she didn't know who Tony was. She knew nothing. Well, then they offered me a subcontractor's position. They put me on the security detail to help take care of Tony's celebrities. And then they also put me on as the assistant captain for the fire team. So they did another thing. They gave me a free ticket. And so I got to take my wife. And so she came, she went through it. And after she graduated on day 4, we're walking on the beach in Fort Lauderdale. And she goes, okay, I get it. I drank the Kool-Aid. This guy's a badass. No doubt about it. You want to run with this dude now that they're paying you and you don't have to take money out of our pocket. Go run with this dude. So she gave me the green light. That all went down in 95, 96. And then in 2003, Robbins offered me the captain's position. And that's when my life took another huge change because he basically came and said, you'll take over all the firewalks globally. And so I did tell them that I homeschooled. So, being away from my kids is going to be a consideration. And they immediately said, we'll pay for your family to travel with us. So here's my kids, 6 and 9, going on the road with Tony Robbins and their dad and their mom. In fact, their first event was in Sydney, Australia. Give me a break, right? So my kids have been so abused. And so that happened. So that was in 2003. 2005, we went to London. We set the world record. That's where we walked 12,300 people. Now, let me disclose something, Tabitha. I say world record. Guinness Book was not there, but I can tell you this. That's the biggest firewalk in our planet's history.
Right.
Right. And the only thing that comes close to that is another Tony Robbins seminar at 10,000 or 9,000.
Right.
And then in 2014, here it comes again. My life took another major change. And that is, I'm driving down the road. My phone rings and it's Google. And Google's like, hey, are you the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins? Yeah. Right.
Looking at your phone, like, who's calling me? Google.
Right. Yeah. Doesn't Google call everybody?
Yeah. Right.
And so I said, well, yeah, I'm him. And what's up? And they said, well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. And I'm like, no shit. Right. So I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? I'm a free agent. What you got? And so the next thing I know, I'm on my way to Mountain View and to put on an event for 148 executives. And what was so cool about that first one, and I've done Google twice, is one of the executives, when we were having lunch, we're sitting at the table there, and she leaned across the room or across the table, and she said, Dave, let me share something with you. I don't know if you know this or not, but we are Google. We know a lot about you. We know about the paradigm shift. We know about the firewalking. And let me tell you something. You're at the top of your game. She goes, you may want to think about starting your own business is what I'm telling you, because you're the only guy in America that can create the paradigm shift that you can. There's a reason Tony Robbins uses it in his seminars. He's smart. He knows. Yeah. And so, I'm just sharing. I'm not telling you what to do, but you may want to think about it. Well, I went back shortly thereafter. I retired from Tony's organization, which was, I was there for just shy of 20 years. And they were right, because shortly after I did Google, I was at NASA. and what's, childhood dream, in Houston at the Space Center, for crying out loud, right?
Yep.
What a childhood dream that was. And then it was, Notre Dame, and then it was Virginia Tech, and then it was Remax, the big real estate company, and then it was Chick-fil-A and Microsoft and Heineken and the EO organization and the YMCA. And, the next thing I know, I'm here with Tabitha on her podcast, right? So, right. You just don't know. But here was kind of the key. I told myself something early on, and I learned it in Alcoholics Anonymous. And, when you get to AA, the 12 steps teach you how to put your life back together. And the 12 traditions teach you how to operate within the group. But in the middle is the sweet spot, and I call it the preamble. And the preamble taught me was, when anyone anywhere reaches out, I want the hand of AA to be there, and for that, I'm responsible. Well, that's exactly the love that I felt when I got there. Those men saved my life in the early stages. Right. And so I became a gatekeeper. I'd be, when someone new would walk through that door, man, I was on them. Because here's what I knew. Their life's on the line. This isn't the Rotary. This isn't the Qantas Club. This is Alcoholics Anonymous, where it's real, and death and destruction is part of the program if you don't do what you're supposed to do when you get there. Yep. So I took it really, really serious. Well, that kind of spilled over into the personal development once I started doing the firewalks, because I've seen 500,000 people do this. My team and I have walked everybody from Oprah to Usher, right? And a whole bunch of people in between. So I would watch them, right? Because they're standing there, they're standing in front of that fire, they're scared to death, they're looking down, and there's this moment of reckoning, right? And boom, the next thing you know, they go. And within 4 seconds, now that they're in the celebration, and guess what? Their whole life changes. Because what happens is, for most, is that you walk on fire, you do it successfully, the coals are 1,000 degrees, and you don't burn yourself, and you ask yourself the right question.
Yep.
And that is, if I can walk on fire, what else can I do? Because you know what, Tabitha, you know this, we know this. I hope your audience does. And that is, what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. Everything you've ever wanted is sitting right over there on the other side of your comfort zone.
Exactly.
And so 2 things there. One, I think the 2 most important times in a person's life is the moment you're born and the moment you figure out why. And there's a why for all of us. And it may take a while to get there. The other thing I like is what one of my mentors said to me, and that was, he said to me, he goes, Dave, remember something. Every single human on this planet has 2 lives. And the second one starts the moment you realize you have only one.
Yes.
And I pondered that, and I went, whoa, that is absolutely profound. So, once you start looking into, I think for me is, the why. Because if your why is big enough, you can pretty much do anything. Yep. And that also revolves around the story that we make up about our lives, no matter what it is. I don't care what happens to you. It could be good or bad. I'm the one that's in charge of that story. I create that. Yep. I'm the architect of what I tell myself and how I live my life. Right. So I can look back and go, I lost my dad and this and that and, my alcoholism and all this strategy. No, there's no victimhood here. I ain't doing that because that doesn't work.
Right. That doesn't serve you.
No. Success leaves clues. Yep. And so does failure. In fact, I chose to love my dad and respect him and honor him and thank him for bringing me into the world. I don't know what was going on in that moment when he took his life, but here was the benefit from telling myself the right things about my biological father. I was out to dinner with my son a couple of years ago, and we're just sitting there, and I like to have a lot of fun with the servers because my mom was a server, and she told me a long time ago, when I was a kid, you treat a server mean and I'll whip your butt.
Yep.
Right? Because, you see it, go into a restaurant and look how some people treat a server like there's something different between them other than they're just trying to have an enjoyable dinner and make that happen for you. So anyway, I'm sitting there with Davey Jr. and we're having fun with the server and we're eating, and all of a sudden I look up at my son and I look down and I go, oh my God, I'm having dinner with my dad's grandson. And so for the first time in my life, I could see my father in my son's eyes. And that was one of the most magical moments ever in my life. And the reason that came about is because I made a good decision what to say about my father and what happened. Because I don't believe that would have happened. I wouldn't have had that moment had I not, chose to love my dad and respect him and honor him and thank him for bringing me into the world.
Right.
So, right? So it comes down to that.
Yeah. When you look at the good in the bad, because there always is. I mean,
Always.
If you're a believer and you look at the Bible, it flat out says, God will make beauty from ashes. If you believe the Bible and you believe it, then that statement alone should prove to you that even in the struggle, even in suicide, even in alcohol, I lost a sister to alcohol in 2018.
Yeah,
and I can choose
so
to look at that and say, this is horrible, or this, or I can look at the good times I had with her and just, I'm mad at the alcohol. I'm mad at the devil. I'm not mad at her. I mean, I loved her. Her spirit was beautiful. She was meant to do great things and she couldn't handle it. But that's okay because I am who I am today because of the things I went through with her. And I'm proud of her. And she had 2 amazing kids. And I choose to look at the good from that. And so I think when you choose to look at the good, and I know there are some horrific things out there. I know you've seen it being in Tony Robbins' world. We're talking sexual abuse and abuse to children, stuff that's horrendous. And I would never wish it on. But at the same time, if you don't choose to look at something good from that, our world will suck you up and spit you out, and it will not be good.
Purpose.
Yes.
It all comes down to purpose. I think Viktor Frankl, and before I go there, let me back up. Something we say amongst us in AA, we say that no alcoholic ever dies in vain because some have to die that others may live to tell the story. Yep. And unfortunately, your beautiful, sweet sister had to go through that because at the end of the day, she wasn't a bad person. She was just a sick person.
No,
and
exactly.
That's a huge distinction, and that's why I teach live from the inside out. If you live from the outside in, you're screwed. If you think if you think it's going to be, a new car and a new house and a bigger this and a bigger that, you're off, man. You're going to suffer immensely. So learn, live from the inside out. And I think Viktor Frankl gave us the biggest distinction on this. If you haven't read his book, it's called Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor was in Auschwitz, and they took everything from him. They killed his family. You're standing outside. It's cold. You're naked. You may not have, had anything to eat for a week. And every moment that you're there, you don't know if you're the next one going to the chamber.
Yep.
So imagine the fear that's, running through your veins 24/7. But here's what Viktor figured out. It's actually quite beautiful. He said, you can take everything from me. You can take my dignity and my clothes and feed me, and you can do all that stuff. But there's one thing you can't take. I have to give it up. I have to relinquish it. And that's my attitude. And so what he told himself was someone has to get out of here to tell this story. And so there was a divine purpose. And guess what? He got out. And so that's kind of the way it goes. In fact, you don't know this, Tabitha. I'll share it right here live on your podcast. I was on a podcast a few months ago. And after we recorded, we were talking sidebar. And Natalia asked me, she said, David, have you ever done a firewalk for veterans? And I said, you mean specifically? And she said, yeah. And I go, no, why? What's going on? And she said, well, we have 200 vets that we're, working with right now. And we, after talking with you, we'd love to bring the Firewalk experience to them because we could reignite purpose. And I go, you absolutely, sure you could. So I said right there on the spot, I said, I'm all in, but give me a couple of days to think this over and I'll get back to you. She said, no problem. I went to bed that night. I woke up in the middle of the night. And it was clear as day. Operation, do no harm. Now, at the same time, because when we were talking, she said, I said, yeah, I know the suicide rate's really high. And I said, it's like 22, right? She goes, no, it's not. That's not even close. That's only if they leave a note. So it's more like 45 to 50. And I went, I'm a vet, grew up during the Vietnam era. My dad that raised me was a highly decorated vet. He was career military officer. And so I went, okay, this is my calling. Here's a higher purpose here. That's the direction I want to go. And so, but I also went, you know what? There's 3 extra categories to this. So yeah, you've got veterans, but what about first responders? That's really high. Yes. What about single moms?
Yep.
I was raised by a single mom for 5 years. I know how hard and difficult that is. I try to hire single moms whenever I can. The girl that takes care of my house, she's a single mom. The girl that took care of my website, she's a single mom. The girl, one of my virtual assistants, she's a single mom. So I try to hire them whenever I can, and I try to encourage them as well, because I need to. It's my calling. It's what I've been trained for. And then the other one, though, is kids that have been abused and neglected. So now there's 4 categories. So we're creating the 501c3, the nonprofit, with Operation Do No Harm. So, make no mistake, corporate America has been really good to me, and they've hired me at every level. Some of the biggest companies in the world have hired me, and they come in and they hire me for them, right? They want to launch a new product. They've got dissension going on. They got problems. They want to upgrade their culture. So it's always for them. So now with Operation Do No Harm, they can do both. I can tell them, look, you want to launch a product? How'd you like to do it at the same time and sponsor 300 veterans? Because here's what you can do. You make a donation that you can write off to Operation Do No Harm. Operation Do No Harm will hire Firewalk Productions. We'll come to your city. We'll announce it to the whole city. You can take care of all that. We'll do all the work. We'll do all the heavy lifting, all the training. We'll clean it all up, and you'll get all the recognition. And so I was on a podcast after that. There's a cool guy, Ed Pericott, in Modesto, and he's the president of the Sunshine Rotary Club. And so when we got to talking about just like this, like we are right now, he said, if I hire you, will you come to Modesto? And I said, when? He said, April 12th and 13th, this last April 12th. And I said, yep, I'm in. I'm available. So we went out there and did it. And several corporations went with us. When you're going to light a fire, why don't you use a Zippo lighter?
There you go.
These guys are so cool. So I went to them and I said, Operation Do No Harm, because I've been working with them now for a couple of years, and they're so awesome. Zippo's such a cool company. To date, I think they've manufactured since 1932 over 800 million lighters. Anyway, They said, yeah, Dave, we're interested. Can you come to Bradford, where the plant is? And I said, oh, gosh, yeah. So I went up there and I sat down with them. They took me on a tour, and then they designed this. Now, what you can't see, cool. Right? That's raised up. And then on the back isn't that beautiful? And on the back, they got the Rotary's name and then the date of the event, and I Firewalk. So we gave those out to all the first responders and the vets who came. We gave them out to all the other corporate sponsors. C3 Insurance came. They brought a video team. They're so awesome. Unbelievable. Jamie, the CEO, and his crew, his people are so awesome. The American Weed Company, I'm actually wearing their logo right now and their hat. They got a hold of me, and they are now manufacturing and growing a strand of cannabis in a gummy format with a peptide so that it's consistent every time you take it, specifically for PTSD and depression for veterans. So they know that cannabis works. I think the cat's out of the bag now. So they're really going forward to help our men and women who are struggling with, depression and PTSD and all that. So I love the American Weed Company. doTERRA, the essential oil company out of Salt Lake, they made an oil for me. So, you've done the Firewalk, right? So when you do the Firewalk, they're like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. Well, now what I've got, it's here on my desk somewhere. It's essential oil. And so doTERRA took 4 blends of oils here and mixed them together. Oh my gosh. This is one of the most enriched oil smells I've ever had. So here's what we did. Stop, wipe your feet, smell this, right? So now what I've done is I've anchored them. So that a month later, if they're having a hard time, all they have to do, we give them this bottle, they take it out of their pocket, they smell, and it takes them right back to that moment when they firewalked.
And smells anchor like number one. People don't realize that smells will anchor you more than like even auditory or taste.
Anything.
If you smell something that you smelled when you were 2 years old and you think, oh, I'm familiar with that. I can't remember what that was. You might have had your grandma chewing black licorice bubble gum or whatever, and it takes you back to that moment. So
absolutely
that's genius. I always said if I did online events, I wanted the box that people got from us to have a smell,
Brilliant.
to have an oil or a candle and have them light it during the event. Because then when they get frustrated or they, can't get through whatever, I'd say, hey, put that oil. So that is so genius, because smells will take them back to that feeling and that emotion. And that's what people crave. That's what you are craving with the alcohol. We all want that feeling. Pleasure is a feeling, but it's like, if you can use things that help you, that trigger those things in our world that's spinning and spiraling and we don't know. And that's why PTSD, people don't realize, but when they're in those environments, my brother-in-law was an ex-Navy SEAL. My brothers were in the Air Force, worked in Korea, like Afghanistan, all the crazy. And the smells that they had endured, that's what will bring them back. People always associate sounds, which yes, that will do it, but smells will trigger it just as much. And so that's genius.
5 times as strong. To this day, if I smell if I smell coconut, it reminds me of a ski trip. Right.
Right.
That wasn't a ski trip. It was actually the first time I went and played in the snow in Big Bear Lake, California. So yeah, and you're right. You can smell a quilt or something, and it reminds you of grandma's house. And so we decided to use that. The other thing we did is we're bringing into this is I get them when the vets come and the first responders come, I have them take an oath. I'm like, look, I'm going to take you out here tonight, and you have an opportunity to participate in a 1,000-year-old rite of passage ritual, a very spiritual connection. But you're going to have to take an oath, and you're going to have to promise to do no harm. So what happens when a vet or a first responder takes an oath? They live up to it. And so we do that. And then I also brought in, you'll love this, I brought in the board break to the Firewalk. So I have them write something on the board they want to move towards, something on back of the board they need to move away from. I have them write anybody's name on the board they're in conflict with, right? So if love and reconciliation or forgiveness and reconciliation is part of that relationship, it ends tonight. You're giving it to the fire. We're done with this. And then I have them write anybody's name on the board that they've lost. So that creates the rite of passage. Because if they're a vet or a firefighter, there's a good possibility they've lost someone. So they get to write their name on the board and bring that energy of that person to the event. So then we take them outside. We've got our board break stations. They break the board. We walk them in a circle. They get to throw the board into the fire. We firewalk them. We anchor it with the oil, and then I put them in a circle, and I do what's called the Ho'oponopono heart hug. So what I do is I say, look across over there, across the circle, and look at somebody, make eye contact with somebody that you don't know. You've never met them before. Now, lock eyes with them. Now, go over to that person and stand 2 feet in front of them. Once I get that set up, then I say, now I want you to hug the opposite way that you normally do, that you're accustomed. And what it's going to do, it's going to put your heart on top of their heart. Now, close your eyes, take a nice deep breath in for me, and hold it. So while they're holding that breath and oxygenating their bodies, guess what happens? Their hearts calibrate. It's unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Right? So I have them do 3 cleansing breaths, and I'll do that a few times. And the next thing you know, I've got 30 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, and their hearts are beating at the same time. And then we bring them back in, and we give them their lighter, and we give them, a necklace, and we anchor it in a little deeper. Yeah. So that's where we're going, Operation Do No Harm. So your question there, I'm sorry to run up all that time.
No, that's good. It's good. Yeah. No, this is all great. I think what you're doing with that is phenomenal. I think that so many of our vets, especially in first responders, I mean, what they see is horrendous, and we need them, but we need to take care of them.
Yes.
There's a country song, and it talks about that. It's like we send them over to fight our war, and then we bring them back, and we treat them like trash, pretty much. And it's like, we need to recognize this, and the type of personality it takes to go over there and fight that. They're not going to come back and just be like, I need help. I mean, it's just not in their DNA. And so to recognize that and to do this in a way that still keeps their dignity, because I think, like I said, the personality type that has to go do that, they need something like this, because it's tough, but at the same time, like what you just expressed with the heart, we know that it's the heart. And so I love that. I love what you do. I think your story is phenomenal. I'm a Tony Robbins fan. I was only introduced to him in 2015. I wish I would have been introduced to him way earlier, but that's what I was. And I did my first Firewalk in 2016, and I crewed for one of his events as well. So, you know, I love that. If I didn't have so many kids, I'd crew all the time. But yeah, it takes a lot of time away. But I love, you know, my kids listen to him. I'll have him on and stuff. And Tony's phenomenal human being. But just more than that, the people, I can tell the people that are surrounding him and just the way that you talk and see life. And I think it's so beautiful. And what you're doing is beautiful, Dave. Thank you so much. I know it's never easy to go back to the painful points, but I think it's good because it, like you said, it's like a release sometimes, and it's recognizing if they were the parent, and Tony says this, you know this, if they were the parents that we wanted, we would not be the people we are today. And I think that's taking ownership of where we are and saying, I'm not perfect. And it helps me as a parent because I have 5 daughters. Whoa. So I want to, I want to be the best mom I can. And I have to tell myself, I will be the mom that they need me to be the women that they will become. And I can't set myself up for this, you know, expectation of what the world thinks I should be as a mom, because God gave them to me knowing the mom I would be for their personality. And I tell moms that all the time because they're really hard. We're really hard on ourselves. Oh, my kid did this. Oh, it's my fault. Oh, no. You're not supposed to be like that, mom. You're not supposed to compare yourself. You're supposed to be the mom you are to those kids. God did not make a mistake. He did not make a mistake with them. He did not make a mistake with you. You just continue to grow and make yourself better every single day, whatever that looks like. And your kids see that. So I love that environment. I thank you so much. Our audience just got their eyebrows blown off. So I think it's amazing. It's great. And if we make this a 2-parter, I might make this a 2-parter just to keep them on their seats because I love it. I love the stories that you tell and I love your heart. So thank you so much, Dave. And we will have all his links, guys, in the description. So check him out. See what he has coming. If you are a CEO or if you have a corporation or if you have an area that has a lot of vets or you have a heart for that, reach out to him, Dave. I know that you'll lead them in the right direction with that and the power that you're doing with your business. So guys, thank you so much for listening. If you have someone in your life that you feel like would be impacted by this podcast, share it with them. Yes. Be a giver, not just a taker. Share it, text message it. Leave us a review so we know if you're loving these kind of interviews, just let us know so we can bring on those people for you. Because my mission on this podcast is to bring you a little hope, because we all know that you can be in those trenches. You might be thinking of suicide, or you might be struggling with PTSD, or you might know somebody, or your marriage is falling apart, or you lost all your money or whatever. There's a way out. Look at these stories, use them as inspiration. There's always a way up and a way out. So if you're in the what went wrong right now, remember, it will lead you to the what went right if you just stay persistent, tether to those who you inspire, and you can do it. Until next time, thanks, guys.